Welcome to a special holiday edition of the 902 podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain John Vick, and I want to thank you for listening. Over the past year, we've enjoyed bringing you information on programs, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. If you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts to catch all of our episodes featuring topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Now, in this episode, we're going to highlight our top 10 episodes of 2023 based on you, our listeners. But before we get to those, we thought we'd take you even further behind the scenes to the lighter side of the 902 podcast. We had a lot of great guests on the show, but sometimes the funniest moments are unplanned. Here's a collection of outtakes from 2023. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in to...
Wow, and he's the one saying that we need to be serious. I'm the most serious one here.
There isn't much of it, so we got to say the good stuff.
No kidding. I say about one smart thing an episode.
I've been saving that for you.
Yeah, I'm sure. You even remember
I can hear this through my thing.
Oh, I know. I can hear your ring click it too. Yes.
It's a good song.
Very majestic. Very majestic. We have 22. We have a potential for 22 members.
Okay.
So that's, however many, 17. They're volunteer board members. They served for 3 years.
Ben, we were doing so good. Do I have to edit this now?
Is it?
See, there I go blaming. I've been picking on Ben all week. So
I want a written apology this time, John. Because I was pretty sure I go. Hey, that made the bloopers right there.
There. Get the picture over with faster.
Well, it lets me glisten.
Yeah, you're gonna be glistening, all right.
Glowing, yes.
I'm gonna come out there and like position you like a photographer.
No,
okay, now I need to have
you
this
have
person.
your picture, and you have to put us right in the same spot we were.
Yeah, all right. Now, Ben, lower your chin, and point your nose up, move to the left. Okay. Anyway.
Well, I don't have a good side, so it doesn't really matter.
That helps make it easy.
Yeah.
So
just take it.
You're having entirely too much fun, John.
okay.
Wow.
I think that's the helium.
Yeah, that's what we should do a whole podcast one day with it.
At least for a little while.
Anyway, there's so many fun things to do on here. So.
You know, somebody asked me if I had injured my shoulder arresting a bad guy, and I said, if I get injured arresting a bad guy, this county is in deep.
With the bloopers behind us, let's get into our top 10 episodes of 2023. The first episode takes us all the way back to episode 10, Police Week. In this episode, Barb Dodge talked about the loss of her husband, Craig Dodge, a former LSO deputy who was killed in the line of duty. And in this clip, she's going to talk about a chance encounter that she had while speaking at the dedication of the National Law Enforcement Memorial with President George H.W. Bush. So the sheriff told us a story, but I want to hear it from you about your time at the memorial with President Bush.
Okay. That was a little bit of a scary time for me, as I was a little nervous about sitting with the president and getting all organized to be there anyway.
And there were thousands and thousands of people there. I mean, it was huge.
Yeah, I mean, it fills the whole grass area.
Yeah,
I mean, it just
does.
people forever.
Yeah, there were a lot of people there.
So you're up on stage.
And I'm up on stage, and initially when, before, this is just an aside, but they were showing me the dais and this little pull-out step under there, because they use the president. If the president is there, it's his podium, because it's exactly the right height for the president to use, who was like 6'4", I'm 5'2". So there was a little pull-out step in front of it, and they said, you need to get up on this step so that you can do this. And all you do is you pull it out with your toe. I'm looking around and thinking, right, I'm going to stand on one foot in heels. I'm already shaking and get this thing out and not trip. But the reason they had the step in there is because the Queen of England had been with him, and when she used that podium, they couldn't see her because she was so short, and they called her the talking hat. So right after that, they put this step in. So I got to use this step anyway, and it worked out fine to get on the step, and I guess it was okay, and it was my turn to speak. And but it was very moving. The music and everything was very moving. So I sat down again, and I sat by the president, and there was a song that made me cry. And of course, at the time, I'm fiddling. I don't know where my purse is, and I'm crying. And he takes out his handkerchief and hands it to me, as a gentleman would do, right? And so I'm wiping my eyes with the handkerchief, and then pretty soon I blew my nose on it. And I thought, what have I done? What did I just do? I just blew my nose on the president of the United States handkerchief. What am I supposed to do with it now? And I sat there for a little bit just thinking, oh my gosh. And there's all this other stuff going on around me that's just huge. And I'm thinking about this handkerchief. What am I going to do with it? And finally I sat there and I had it, and I looked up at him. Of course, he's very tall. And he kind of looked up at him, and I said, Mr. President. And he realized what I was talking about, and he said, just keep it. Barbara always makes me carry two. So, oh my gosh, it was just, that was kind of a big memory for me from that day. I just shook my head and go, what a goofball you can be. But so even in the midst of all these emotional things, there are things that you just got to shake your head at and go, oh my gosh, we're still
I
humans.
just remember hearing that story, just laughing. And then everybody who's ever heard me talk about the dedication to the memorial has to hear that story, because I think it's priceless.
Oh, I can't believe what I did it, but I did.
Well,
But
you got to keep it though. Then
I got to keep it. I washed it, and I put it in my scrapbook, and I do have it as a keeper. So he was such a gentleman. He was just such a good man, such a nice man. And yeah, it was fun to get to meet him and have a little time to chat with him. And his wife was there, Barbara was there, but they made her sit kind of way back in the back, which was just wrong. She should have been able to sit with us, but nobody asked me how the seating plan should go. But anyway.
Coming in at number 9 on our top 10 of 2023, episode 21, Criminal Interdiction, with Sergeant Jason Mayo. In this clip, Sergeant Mayo talks about the process of criminal interdiction throughout Lancaster County. Jason, obviously we're not going to be able to get into every tactic and every strategy that we use. If we did, you wouldn't be as good as as you are at what you do. But for people that kind of don't know how it works, walk us through what does a typical stop or typical case look like hypothetically?
So, I mean, on the interstate, when we're up there, we stop vehicles. And when you're in the process of stopping people, the majority of them are just like anyone listening. They're not involved in criminal activity. They're traveling from point A to point B, and they want to get on their way. So you'll stop them for a traffic violation and tell them about it and what it is, and kick them loose.
So sometimes in the media we hear that, you guys are just stopping people just for the sake of stopping them. Can you guys do that?
No, yeah, you have to have probable cause to stop the car, and the good thing is everything's recorded now 8 ways to Sunday, so there's a lot of video, and it's a very good thing. But so when we stop enough vehicles, we'll stop certain vehicles that maybe the occupants aren't the normal people, and you can tell that from training and experience. And if they do set off some red flags, we'll speak to them throughout the stop and through the course of our investigation on the side of the road, and we'll get to a point where we either consensually search the vehicle if we can, or sometimes we'll run a canine on the vehicle if we can, or maybe we'll have probable cause from some other reason, and we'll search the car. And if we find contraband, whatever that may be, we will document that on the side of the road, and depending on what that is, the person will either have to go to jail, or if it's not something that's a criminal offense in Nebraska, but it's illegal to have, which happens a lot, those people might be released from the side of the road, but we will continue the investigation with our federal partners from that point forward.
Coming in at number 8 on the top 10 list was episode 18, The Bearcat. In this episode clip, you'll hear Sheriff Wagner talking about some of the challenges encountered when seeking funding for the Bearcat, involving the over-militarization of law enforcement equipment. You know, Sheriff, at the time, you took a little bit of heat on that for what was viewed by some as, you know, being too militaristic.
Too militaristic. That's the phrase. And, you know, people thought it was a tank. They thought it was armed. It's armored, but it's not armed. So there's no kinds of offensive weapons attached to the vehicle. And so we did some public meetings. We brought we called it the ERV, the Emergency Rescue Vehicle. Brought it there, let people look at it. Had a slideshow.
Yep.
I think, you know, with the paint job that we had put on it.
And changed the name, changed the paint.
Yep, the emergency lighting, you know, the labeling. There was a sheriff's vehicle, emergency rescue vehicle. I think all told, with radios, lights, paint, you know, all that stuff, we had about $10,000 in that vehicle. And that's what we could afford at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was, as Jared can attest to, it was tough driving that thing.
It was.
Visibility, the way the vehicle is shaped, it makes it difficult. And it's huge, it's heavy, it's loud, it doesn't stop on a dime. So, but nonetheless, you know, if the police department needed an armored vehicle, we would bring the ERV out. If the state patrol or other counties needed an armored vehicle, and we let everybody know, surrounding counties, that we had it and it's available if they need it.
I think one of the big game changers on what the vision of it was, what the public was doing in 2015 in the floods.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Rescuing people.
Yep. One of our great pictures is Deputy Chrissy Worcester standing on the back of the RV, handing out a child who they had rescued from high water when in 2015 when the South Bottoms here flooded.
Yep.
And it was not deep enough for a boat, too deep for most vehicles. And so the ERV was high enough and stout enough to be able to do that. And so they just drove it around, and people needed rescuing. We got them to dry ground. So it was really kind of a neat deal.
Yeah.
And when you compare, you know, the bang that the taxpayers get, I mean, that was, like you said, all told, maybe about $10,000.
Yep.
Versus what would have otherwise been
$350,000,
$400,000 that we were able to make work because of that partnership with the military.
That's exactly right.
Coming in at number 7 on the top 10 list, we go all the way back to episode 2, Electronic Evidence, with investigator Jim Baird. In this clip, Investigator Baird talks about the birth of the Electronic Evidence Unit at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. The Electronic Evidence Unit, we call it the EEU for short. What is that Electronic Evidence Unit? Why do we have one?
Originally, when they created my spot in about 2003, our agency was, I think, we foresaw this becoming something in the future. We needed somebody for tech support at the office. We also knew that there would be some computers come in that would be evidence. And so we created that spot. And as it's gone along, the amount of digital evidence on cases has grown exponentially since then, and, you know, really shot up since the iPhone changed everything. Everybody started buying smartphones, and we have a lot of evidence dealing with phones in almost every case we work.
when you're in the unit today, who do you work with down there?
Our unit's composed of 2 technical investigators from the sheriff's office. The Lincoln Police Department has 2 investigators, and they also have a crime analyst in the forensics lab. That
Walk us back to when you said you started. This originally didn't start as the electronic evidence unit as we know it today. What did that look like?
Originally, my job consisted of, as far as electronic evidence, was computers. 2003, we were doing child enticement cases, child pornography cases, and so the evidence that came into our office was computers. And as time has gone along, it's more and more cell phones, and then now it's about 95 to 96% cell phones.
So, Sheriff, from your perspective, what was the impetus to make that move?
Well, I just remember then Chief Deputy Sheriff Bill Jarrett and I talking about our computer technical support was growing. We were starting to put computers in cars that needed more technical support. And then the evidence on computers. And we kind of figured it'd be a 75-25 split, 75 technical support, 25 electronic evidence analysis. And that flipped in a heartbeat. It really changed. And so we increased the number of employees in there to 2 instead of 1. And we've been able to buy some really good equipment for the unit that allows them to do the work we need them to do.
Next at number 6, a more recent episode, episode 40, Local Outreach to Suicide Loss Survivors, or LOSS. And in this episode, members of the Nebraska LOSS team talk about some of the stigma that surrounds reaching out to suicide loss survivors. I have a question about that, and it's something that we encounter sometimes when we deal with crime victims. We had Barb Dodge on here talking about when her husband Craig was a deputy for us that was killed, and families sometimes end up in a situation where they're not even being asked to join, but they're joining a club that they didn't want to be a part of. And do you ever encounter that maybe resistance to your services, or someone that has that stigma, or whatever you want to call it, that I don't want to talk to you because I don't want to be in that club?
I think I have several thoughts with that. One is, it's one of the reasons when they hear about the LOSS team and we say, well, we are also survivors, I want to clarify, sometimes they think we also are the ones that have tried suicide ourselves. It's not. We are survivors of the loved ones that have killed themselves by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was hoping you would define that.
yeah, so I'm going to define that. And then also we always say, the new term everyone's saying is a new normal. What we always refer to as like a puzzle. You have a puzzle. And you don't have that puzzle that there's always one piece missing.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of your life, you're going to learn somehow that you continue, but you always have one piece missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we go on the calls, we like he said, we've been trained and with our personal experience. Hey, for me, it's been 5, 10 years or 2 years. We know what this feels like. I can't tell you how you feel, but I want you to know we know that it's different. And also the taboo-ness of the topic. And with faith-based, too, I want to share that we never tell anyone how to feel or think. We're very open, and we follow what their thoughts are. And I think that's important to say, too.
Yeah. One of the, I'm kind of a mission statement junkie, so forgive me, but one of the things that I saw on your website that I really like, it says, the LOSS team's mission is to help assist in beginning a journey towards hope.
Yeah.
How does that look practically for the LOSS team, that journey towards hope?
I see this as a way that peers are able to install hope.
Okay.
By just being there and saying to that person who is experiencing that pain and anguish that there is we're going to be with you on this journey. There are others. You're now part of a club. No one invited you in the club. You didn't apply for membership, but you're now part of a club of people who are going to support you. Because when we start talking about the experience of suicide loss, that pain and anguish that goes with that, we're able to say to you that there is a way to move forward. And part of the way to move forward with your life is to is continue to be connected with positive people, being connected and be able to move forward. Because the stigma that does surround suicide loss is still with us because of a lot of different reasons that it's still there. So part of our training of our suicide loss teams is to talk about caring language and language not to use. It's because one of the keys that oftentimes it comes out in a dialogue with suicide loss survivors at the scene, at the location, is that often we'll say, there's going to be a lot of folks who'll say some things that that's going to be hurtful. It's going to hurt, and so I call it foot and mouth disease. and I talk to folks about, be aware. Your neighbor, your minister,
And they mean
your
well,
best
but
friend.
they just don't know what to say.
Yeah, so we talk about grace. It's important for that as a suicide loss survivor that we remember that the others don't intend, but they don't know what words to use, so we just use words.
Yeah.
So it's helpful. It's amazing that through the years that we've been doing this, that message I just shared with you oftentimes is one of the key messages that folks remember and tell us years later that made a difference. That made a difference for them as they move forward in their journey of hope.
For number 5 in the top 10 list of episodes in 2023, we go back to episode 1, Recruiting and Hiring. In this clip, Sergeant Bolzer talks about the length of time that it takes to bring a deputy from the point of application to working by themselves on the road. When we're actually going through this process for a deputy, roughly what's the amount of time that it takes for me to get from an application to working on my own, driving my own car out on the streets in Lancaster County?
In a perfect world, about 10 months from the time we open up applications until we have a contributing member of this agency.
So that obviously has an impact on our staffing levels.
Realistically, it's more like a year. I think
Yeah.
you said optimally
Yes.
10 months, but yeah, it's more like a year. Absolutely. So when we have an opening, somebody gives us 2 weeks notice that they're leaving, that leaves us with, 9 months and 2 weeks of vacancy that we have to absorb.
So, Chief, right now we've got a handful of vacancies,
Yes.
and we're actively testing and taking applications for those positions right now. You guys, in fact, just did some interviews today with some candidates and made some preliminary offers. So we're hoping to be able to fill a few of those spots. But what does it look like from your perspective when we're short a little bit, and what kinds of things are we doing to help staffing levels downstairs?
Well, the big thing we really need to make sure is that we have enough patrol deputies out there that they can get back up and take all the calls for service. And it's come to the point where we've had to pull people from specialized positions to go back to patrol, and so we have enough people to work. Because you can't just have them working, because people get vacation time, people get sick, and you got to make sure you have enough people on that. So anytime we do that, and like we pulled from our fugitive marshal service, and when we do that, it makes it less safe for those guys out there doing that, and also they can't go out and get the real bad guys and get them off the street. So then that starts to affect the people in Lancaster County, because these guys and gals are out doing crime at that time, and if we're not out actively chasing them, it's an issue. So yeah, it is a problem. Now, we've also been lucky enough to get some more deputies. We got our SROs, which we didn't have, so that increased our staffing at that point in time.
School resource officers.
Yeah, school resource officers, and we've had a 6 and 6 program, And I think we're on number 5 right now. But some of our issue is just finding enough good applicants so that we can fill these spots and get that, because we can't lower our standards here. That's one thing we will not do. I'd rather go short, and I know Sheriff Wagner thinks the same way, that I'd rather go short than put somebody out there that does not need to be a law enforcement officer.
Coming in at number 4 on the top 10 list, we go all the way back to the beginning, episode 0, LSO 101. In this clip, Sheriff Wagner talks about the name of the 902 podcast and where that name comes from. You know, I took a class. I've listened to podcasts. I knew podcasts were a thing. I hadn't completely given it thought in a law enforcement context until there's college classes out there, and Cynthia Lewis, Mari Shine were instructors out there for me, and exposed me to this idea in one of my communications classes. And so we're looking forward to trying it out here at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. So I think the goal, what we're trying to do, again, just give our listeners an inside look at LSO, hopefully tell some of those stories, talk about some of the updates, cases maybe, and just things that don't lend themselves to 30-second sound bites that we want people to know about the good things that are going on here at LSO. But our hope is to maybe release monthly episodes. I think we're planning on having some guests on to talk about various public safety topics, things like that. And we hope to roll these out throughout the rest of 2023 and beyond. But you know, we titled it the 902 podcast, Sheriff, and 902 goes back a little ways. Where does that come from?
Well, it does. In the 1950s, a statewide radio system for law enforcement was put into place. The State Patrol was sort of the keeper of that system, and so every trooper from number 1 to number 500 was their radio call sign. 600 would have been at that time state liquor inspectors. 700 numbers were reserved for game and parks officers. 800 numbers were reserved for some other entity, and then 900 numbers were reserved for sheriffs. And so each sheriff in each county, their radio call sign would be 9, followed by the number of their county. So in Lancaster County, we're county number 2, so we're 902. And then the deputies are numbered consecutively after that. So Chief Deputy Houchin is 9021. And, we're up to 902214 now. But so the sheriff out in Scotts Bluff would be 921. The sheriff in Cherry County would be, 973, I believe, or 975?
Sounds right.
Brown County, 75, I guess. So that's sort of, in back in the day, if I had been traveling or if a sheriff was traveling into the state penitentiary with a prisoner, and they called Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, it was 9215. We may not know who that person is, but we know he's a deputy sheriff from Scottsbluff County with a prisoner. Mm-hmm. And then we could help them out however that took place. So it was a great method of communicating. That's how that numbering system came about.
We've now reached the top 3 in our Best of 2023 series. Coming in the 3rd position is episode 8, And True, which was a true crime case review of the And True homicide. Listen as former Chief Deputy Jeff Blymeister talks about a pivotal moment in the case in which they listened to a recorded phone call between the murder suspect and his wife.
So we're looking for all of those things and thinking, how can it be that someone like this, with this predisposition towards extreme violence and random violence, be living out there and not doing other things? Well, we do some research. We find out that he is living in Deltona, Florida with his 5th wife at the time. And at that phase is kind of when I started becoming involved, and we were corresponding with the Major Crimes Unit down in Volusia County, Florida. Steve Eppens, again, leading this investigation. And there's plans that are developed to go down there and try to contact Todd, because we really had exhausted every other investigative approach. Ben had completed a polygraph. She passed the polygraph, but there was no physical evidence.
We couldn't get her to be able to contact Todd because she did not have any ability to know how to do that, and it would have looked pretty hinky if out of the blues she would have made a phone call or anything of that nature.
It was, and that relationship wasn't good
No,
any
not
longer
at all.
either.
And did we have any contacts with Volusia County, or how did that get started? Did we just have to kind of reach out and cold call?
Cold call.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
And that's another great part of this particular incident is that they dropped everything. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because Steve Eppins and I, we fly down to Florida February 28th of 2005, and we're just going to try to talk to him, see what we can find out.
Wow.
So when we first get down there, we're coordinating with Volusia County. We're giving their major crimes investigators all of this background information that we have. We're doing some attempts to just see what he's doing. And despite trying to remain inconspicuous, he picks up on the fact that there's people that are watching him and kind of exhibits some paranoid behavior. But again, this homicide was a long time ago. He has no idea that investigators from Lincoln, Nebraska have traveled to Florida, and it could have been for a variety of different things.
Well, yeah, like you said, as we may not even know, he may have been thinking it's something else that he's done that we don't know about, that he's being more paranoid about too.
Absolutely. So we've exhausted our attempts to try to contact him, and we, by intent, had not contacted him or his current wife, Carmela Baker. But Steve Eppins and I can vividly recall it. We go to his dad's house, March 3rd, 2005, and we're trying to talk to his dad about, this is what we know. We believe your son murdered someone in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1996. And the disbelief, as most would anticipate, was there. So in the midst of all of this, no luck in talking to Todd himself, we drive to his current wife's employer, which is a short distance away in Castleberry. And we attempt to interview on her, and repetitively, this is not the Todd Baker I know. I do not believe you. And we're providing the photos and talking about how we got there. Very candid in the approach. Her belief in Todd allowed us an opportunity, an opening that we were somewhat unprepared for then. We made the decision to say, you know what? Will you call him up? Ask him these questions. Ask him if he didn't. And she was so adamant in her support of Todd that she was willing to do it. But we had a handheld recorder and a phone. We did the best we could.
Well, we'll play that call right now.
I want to know what is going on, and I want you to tell me the truth.
I think I'm probably taking it from getting fucking life insurance. What's going on, Carmel? That's what they want to do.
They told me about this and True, and they told me that she was murdered and that you did it. Did you kill her, Todd?
Carmel, where are you at?
I'm in the conference room. This is the only place where I can call you back where people were going to listen.
Can you listen to me? Okay.
Yes, I'll listen to you.
I can listen for a minute and hear what I say to you. Okay?
Yes.
You are as beautiful as breathtaking. And I love you so much.
Then tell me the truth.
And
love you. I've loved you since I met you, and you know that, but you gotta tell me what happened.
You know, I'm so sorry, baby. I really am. Have you talked to your mom at all or anything?
No, I haven't.
Because, you know, they're going to take me up there. Okay?
Why would they take you up there?
Because they can. All right?
Todd,
And they will.
did you do what they're telling me that you did? Because that is not the Todd Baker that I know.
I know it. I know it. And that's who you have to love. Okay?
No, you
All
need
right.
to tell. Have you always? But you've always been that way. Did you do this to this person or not? I deserve the truth. I deserve at least that.
Oh.
I need to know that. I deserve to know that. You owe me that at least.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes. Because I love you, yes. Okay? And I'm so sorry God love you. Okay?
Wow, how good did that feel when you got that out?
Yeah, and sitting in that conference room with Carmela, whose life was just turned upside down by this whole thing, again, genuinely did not know this part of Todd Baker. And her cooperation, her persistence lent towards his confession in that manner. That, coupled with the statements that we had already received from Angela Hecox, was enough. And so the process began with Jeff Mathers and Joe Kelly at the time of filing an arrest warrant back here in Lancaster County for the murder that occurred in 1996.
In spot number 2 on our Best of 2023, we have episode 14, Melissa Schmidt, which was also a true crime case review. Listen to this recorded jail phone call as Todd Baker not only confesses to the murder of Ann True featured in episode 8, but also speaks to another one being out there, which ultimately turned out to be Melissa Schmidt.
This telephone conversation is recorded and may be monitored by department staff. Thank you for using Global Tel-Link.
Well, hi. What are you doing? I pushed the wrong button. Oh. What's going on? Oh, I just had to call you. Tell you. Had to, huh? No, yeah, I just had to. Because I wanted to tell you that, I believe in God and everything, right? And I had to confess my sins in order to make it to my salvation. And you guys already pretty much know anyway. I figure, living in a fantasy world, it's not that I did that crime, Angela and me did. Did what? Her did the crime. Angela and me did. Together. Well, Monday anyway. I tried to call him Friday. I wouldn't even bother. Oh, but there's another one out there, and I have to clear it up, too. And that's the reason that I said I had to call you and tell you. Yeah, you better not. And didn't want you to find out any other way. Yeah, you better not. You better not do that. They're going to take you back to court then. Well, that's the way it goes. See, this is the whole deal. If I don't, then that's coveting something that somebody else needs, you know what I mean? I'm keeping it from them. Besides that other person, she needs to go home, you know? You know what I mean? The other person needs to go home. Yeah. To her family. You know? When you want that, if that was you, your child out there? Yeah.
And that brings us to our number one spot on our top 10 best of episodes of 2023 on the 902 podcast. And that number one spot goes to episode 39, Tyler Goodrich. Listen to this clip as Tyler Goodrich's friend Rachel talks about efforts by friends and investigators to locate Tyler.
You know, we're trying to look at every angle, and it's incredibly frustrating. I mean, we just want to bring our friend home. If there is a positive to any of this, it's that the Lincoln community is incredibly supportive, and people want to see Tyler come home. And this isn't your everyday missing persons case, and we will make sure that Tyler doesn't just become a statistic, and that's what we vowed to do. I hope that everybody out there has friends like me and Amanda and Tyler's family that want them to be found, because I think some of the things that we're doing you don't always see, and so you don't see 15,000 people getting together and organizing searches and calling up Nancy Grace or anybody that'll listen and say, please help us find our friend. And we're not going to stop doing that. So we're just praying at this point for a break in the case so we can keep Tyler top of mind so we can find him.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to this special holiday episode of the 902 podcast featuring our top 10 episodes of 2023. Listeners like you have streamed the 902 podcast over 11,000 times since we launched. We're blown away by the support, and we've really enjoyed bringing you an inside look into LSO this year. We look forward to bringing you more content and interviews with public safety guests in 2024. To close out this holiday episode, we're going to end by playing a poem written and performed by retired Ohio State Trooper Bob Welsh. We'd like to thank Trooper Welsh for producing this recording of My Christmas Eve and providing us with permission to share it with you. On behalf of all of us at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, we want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
I'm going to tell you a story from my highway patrol days. I simply call this my Christmas Eve. The hour is late, should go to bed, near midnight I believe. But memories keep me wide awake this snowy Christmas Eve. Yes, memories of my kids moved on, each has their separate life. And how the holidays have changed since angels took my wife. The toys, the food, the Christmas cheer. My wife would bear the load because I would work most holidays, state trooper on the road. Just sitting in my easy chair, so many years retired, I reminisce on times gone by and all that has transpired. Of all the many happenings that seemed to come to light, a multitude of them occurred right on this very night. A drunken woman in Iraq who died on Christmas Eve leaves memories of a tragic case most people can't believe. I had to drive to where she lived to tell her next of kin. Found the rundown mobile home she had been living in. The person answering the door, I still recall today, a little girl about 4 years old. She said, "I'm Sue McKay." I asked her if her dad was home and felt the longest pause. She said, "My daddy ran away." You must be Santa Claus. My mommy said you'd come tonight if I just stayed in bed and bring a pretty doll for me. It's what my mommy said. I broke the law that Christmas Eve, did not call child's care. They'd merely put her in a room, and that I couldn't bear. I picked her up and took her home. My wife tucked her in bed and wrapped the pretty doll for her, just like her mommy said. Adopted by a loving home, and soon they moved away. I won't forget that Christmas Eve and little Sue McKay. Another bitter Christmas Eve, a blizzard to behold. Had left a family in the ditch, just trapped there in the cold. By grace of God, I spotted them all cold and gaunt with fright, drove them to a motel room to safely spend the night. One Christmas Eve, a homeless man, shivering and wet, was trying hard to get a ride I'm sure he'd never get. I picked him up and drove him to a diner on the hill to warm his bones and left him with a $5 bill. Strange how when you're all alone with memories you recall, you think of everything you've done. Was it worth it all? I think about my God, my job, my children, and my wife. Would I do it all the same? Could I relive my life? Then comes a knock upon my door. This late, who could it be? A neighbor? Or has Santa Claus come to visit me? The figure standing in the cold gives me a sudden fright. A trooper with that solemn look. Dear God, who's died tonight? I'm flashing back through bygone years and how I'd often stood on someone's porch to bring them news, and it was never good. Is this how life gets back at me? For misery I've induced, where pain I've caused some other folks has now come home to roost. But looking in the trooper's eyes, my mind is in a whirl. I see a pleasant countenance. The trooper is a girl. She smiled and reached to shake my hand, and silence wasn't broke until a tear rolled down her cheek, and then she softly spoke. I'm sure you don't remember me, but thought I'd stop and say, God bless you on this Christmas Eve. I'm Trooper Sue McKay.